In a seemingly peaceful suburban town, a mother's worst nightmare unfolds. Emily Lawson's life is torn apart when her son, Paris, is charged with the unthinkable, murdering his little sister, Ella. Join us as we delve into the heart-wrenching story of love, betrayal, and the quest for redemption. Emily Lawson, a dedicated single mother of two, lived a seemingly idyllic life in a quaint suburban neighborhood. Her home was filled with laughter, love, and the warmth of family. Emily, a social worker by profession, had devoted her life to helping others, but nothing could prepare her for the heart-wrenching event that would forever alter the course of her life. Emily's children, 13-year-old Paris and 4-year-old Ella, were her pride and joy. Paris, a bright and inquisitive teenager, had always been protective of his younger sister. Ella, with her infectious laughter and boundless energy, brought light into every room she entered. Emily's world revolved around her children, and she cherished every moment spent with them. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily received a call that would shatter her world. Rushing home from work, she was met with a scene of unimaginable horror. The lifeless body of her beloved daughter, Ella, lay in a pool of blood, and standing over her, with a knife in hand, was Paris. The police arrived swiftly, taking Paris into custody as Emily crumbled to the floor, her heart breaking into a million pieces. The investigation revealed that Paris had brutally murdered his sister in a fit of rage. The motive was unclear, and Emily was left grappling with the overwhelming grief and confusion. As the days turned into weeks, Emily was consumed by a torrent of emotion. She struggled to understand how her sweet, protective son could commit such a heinous act. Her mind raced with questions. Had she missed the sign? Could she have prevented this tragedy? Was Paris truly a monster, or was there something deeper at play? Emily's life became a whirlwind of court dates, therapy sessions, and sleepless nights. Paris was charged with first-degree murder, and the trial became a media spectacle. Emily was thrust into the public eye, her every move scrutinized by the press and the community. During the trial, disturbing details about Paris's behavior began to emerge. He had been experiencing severe psychological issues, including violent fantasy and emotional instability. Emily was tormented by guilt, questioning whether she had done enough to address his mental health. The courtroom was a battleground of conflicting emotions. Emily sat in the front row, torn between her love for her son and her overwhelming grief for her daughter. The prosecution painted Paris as a cold-blooded killer, while the defense argued that he was a troubled child in need of help. With Paris found guilty, he was sentenced to a juvenile detention center, where he would undergo intensive psychological evaluation and treatment. Emily's heart ached with the knowledge that her son was now incarcerated and her daughter was gone forever. As she visited Paris in the detention, Emily was confronted with a heartbreaking dilemma. Could she find it in her heart to forgive him? Could she ever reconcile the image of her loving son with the monster that had taken Ella's life? The visits were filled with tears and unanswered questions as Emily struggled to come to terms with the reality of her shattered family. Emily sought solace in therapy, hoping to make sense of her conflicting emotions. She was riddled with guilt and regret, constantly replaying the events leading up to that fateful night. Her therapist encouraged her to focus on her own healing, but Emily found it nearly impossible to move forward. Months turned into years, and Emily's visits to Paris became less frequent. She threw herself into her work, trying to find meaning in helping others, even as her own life remained in tatters. Then, a twist in the story emerged that would further complicate Emily's already tumultuous journey. One evening, Emily received a call from a former colleague who had been investigating a series of violent crimes in the area. The colleague revealed startling new evidence, suggesting that Paris's actions might have been influenced by an external factor. There were whispers of a sinister presence in their neighborhood, a figure who had been preying on vulnerable children and manipulating them into committing violent acts. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily embarked on a quest to understand the full extent of what had happened to Paris. She delved into the dark underbelly of her seemingly peaceful community, uncovering a web of deceit, manipulation, and evil. The more she learned, the more she realized that Paris might have been a victim himself. As Emily pieced together the puzzle, she found herself face to face with the man responsible for corrupting her son. The confrontation was intense and harrowing, as Emily demanded answers and justice for her family. The man's cold, calculated demeanor only fueled Emily's resolve. With the new evidence, Emily worked tirelessly to secure a retrial for Paris. She teamed up with a determined lawyer who believed in their cause, and together they presented a compelling case that highlighted the external influences that had driven Paris to commit the unthinkable act. The retrial was a roller coaster of emotions as Emily relived the painful memories and faced the man who had torn her family apart. But her determination never wavered. She was fighting not just for Paris, but for Ella, and for her own sense of peace and closure. The retrial concluded with Paris being transferred to a specialized facility that focused on rehabilitation and healing rather than punishment. Emily's heart ached with the knowledge that her son would still face a long and difficult journey, but she felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. In the months that followed, Emily continued to visit Paris, their relationship slowly mending as they confronted their shared pain and began the process of forgiveness. Emily found solace in helping other families navigate similar tragedies, using her own experience to guide and support them. As time passed, Paris began to make progress in the specialized facility. His therapists reported significant improvements in his behavior and emotional stability. Emily's visits became a source of hope and healing for both of them. They talked about the past, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Paris expressed deep remorse for his actions, and Emily saw glimpses of the boy she had once known. Emily also started to rebuild her own life. She joined support groups for families affected by violence and became an advocate for mental health awareness. Her work brought her a sense of purpose and helped her connect with others who had experienced similar pain. She began to see that her story, as tragic as it was, could be a beacon of hope for others. One day, Emily received a letter from Paris. In it, he poured out his heart, expressing his sorrow, his gratitude for her love, and his determination to make amends. He wrote about his dreams for the future and his desire to use his experience to help others. Emily read the letter with tears streaming down her face, feeling a mix of pain and pride. The journey was far from over, but Emily and Paris were on the road to recovery. They both knew that they would never be able to fully erase the past, but they were committed to building a new future. Emily continued her advocacy work, sharing her story with the world, in the hope that it might prevent other tragedies. Emily stood at Ella's gravesite once more, feeling a sense of peace. She whispered a promise to her daughter, vowing to honor her memory by living a life of compassion and strength. She knew that Ella's spirit would always be with her, guiding her through the darkest times. As she walked away from the grave, Emily felt the weight of the past lift ever so slightly. The shadows of guilt and grief would always be a part of her, but she had learned to live with them and to find strength in her love for both of her children. Her journey had been long and arduous, but she had found a sense of peace and purpose. She was ready to face whatever the future held, knowing that she had the strength to endure and the courage to keep moving forward. Emily's journey is one of unimaginable pain and unyielding strength. As she fights for justice and healing, her story becomes a beacon of hope for others facing similar tragedies. Subscribe and join us as we explore the depths of human resilience and the power of forgiveness.